There's one Midwestern bellwether county that gets a lot of attention every 4 years, despite it being in a solidly red state. It just happens to have weird predictive powers. It's Indiana's Vigo County. It's a small rural county. It's home to a large student population on Indiana's western border between Indiana and Illinois. Vigo County has the distinction of having sided with the winning presidential candidate in all 16 presidential elections dating back to 1956. It's officially uncanny. The town's roughly 100,000 residents voted for Barack Obama twice, in 2008 and 2012. The county then switched to Trump by a 15-point margin 4 years ago. For what it's worth, Emerson College recently did a poll of Vigo County, Indiana, for this year, and what they came up with was that it was a tie, 48-48. Joining us now is someone who knows a lot about Indiana and its politics. He has also been out campaigning for the Biden campaign today, specifically in Michigan. He is the former mayor of South Bend, former presidential candidate, current surrogate for the Biden-Harris ticket, Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us. It's good to have you here.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
How does Vigo County go this year?
I think we'll get it, but it is awful close. I've campaigned in Vigo County back in 2010 when I was running for state treasurer. Didn't win the county, and I didn't win the state. But, the remarkable thing right now is that, Joe Biden is ahead by so much nationally, but, of course, it only counts if it comes through in these states that are largely a game of inches. We've got an election to get through these next 48 hours, but afterwards we've got to ask ourselves some serious questions about our democracy, about how that can be true. And, I think it's time for us to look at what it means for our representative republic to be a little more representative.
Mr. Mayor, when you have been out traveling around the country talking to voters on behalf of the Biden-Harris campaign, first of all, we've very much enjoyed all of your appearances on Fox News. But I know you've been doing a lot of national media, local media, but also just talking to people. If there was a thing that you could go back in time now, if you could earn the Biden-Harris campaign an extra week where they could sort of restitch some of the seams and redouble their efforts in some areas or pump up some work that they have only been able to half do thus far, what are those places that you'd go back and urge them to do even more?
Well, again, I think this campaign is ahead for a reason. They've stuck to the issues that really matter most and are affecting people. I think what none of us could have guessed when this campaign began for Joe Biden or when I was running for this nomination is that COVID would come and in some ways change everything, but in many ways just accentuate what we'd already seen, from racial injustice to the crisis of not enough Americans having health care. I'm a big believer that you can't talk enough about the economy. It drives me nuts that even now Donald Trump gets quite a bit or takes quite a bit of credit for the Obama-Biden recovery. And I think that, to his credit, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they've been talking a lot about this. But I would always want us to be talking about it even more, because we can't let them get away with claiming to some kind of economic miracle. Look, they inherited economic growth, slowed it down a little bit. It was actually a manufacturing recession. And I'm talking about pre-COVID. Post-COVID, on track to be the worst jobs president since Herbert Hoover. And we should be driving that home, along with the vitally important message that I think Joe Biden is very effectively delivering, that really is what I think helps bring a lot of people over the line, which is, look, whether you're progressive or moderate, independent, or even a Republican who likes to think for yourself, we just need to come together and can't go on with this chaos. A nation divided the way Donald Trump has divided us will not be able to resolve any of our issues: healthcare, climate, racial justice, you name it.
I too, Mayor Pete, I'm a fan of your Fox appearances, and they're purposeful. I mean, and the purpose is to drive this message you're delivering right here. And our colleague Alicia Menendez talked about disinformation that has seeped into the minds of a lot of Florida voters, especially in the Hispanic community. I wonder if you have if you come back like an explorer and explain to the Biden campaign, here's what has sunk in. I mean, there are viewers over there that actually believe Joe Biden is either a socialist or under the influence of socialists and will become one if elected. How do you, in these closing hours, when all you've got is maybe one hit on a cable channel, one hit on a talk radio show in the targeted county, how do you dispel that in your very expert, skilled way? What do you say?
I think the most important thing is to remind people that we've had decades to get to know Joe Biden. And when you're looking in the eyes of Joe Biden, you are not looking in the eyes of some kind of crazy radical. This is somebody who has made clear what he believes and with whom the American people agree on issue after issue, from the fact that the wealthy and corporations need to pay their fair share to the idea of expanding, not taking away health care. Now, let's remember that, even the word socialism, which I think has very little power over people my age or younger. But if you grew up at the knee of a parent who fled something that is not at all what we would recognize as, let's say, European socialism, but something that called itself socialism and was horribly repressive in Latin America, then that word still has an awful lot of power. We've just got to make it clear that this is the recycling of a scare tactic that the right has used against all Democratic candidates, moderate, progressive, and otherwise, for decades. And, of course, all those horrible things they say about us never come true.
Yeah. Hey, Mayor Pete, what's a lot of people forget that, the Obama-Biden ticket actually won Indiana, right, in 2008. They won a lot of states that people didn't expect a black candidate to be able to win, but Biden was on that ticket too. Can you talk a little bit about if Biden is able to prevail, what will we look back and say that he did right in terms specifically of white voters? Because it does feel like we're seeing Biden be able to reproduce what Obama did, which was to win the highest share of white voters, I think, since Jimmy Carter. And that's a combination of, white working class voters, but especially college educated white voters. What is the difference? If he wins, what will he have done right, particularly in your region, in the Midwest?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is tonal. A lot of it is this idea that certainly is strong among a lot of people I know here in Indiana who say, look, I vote for the person. And maybe it turns out they usually vote Republican, but they'll vote for a person who they believe has their best interests at heart. And that just sort of comes across with Joe Biden. He's been very clear on policy, on what he's going to do about health care, taxes, the economy, COVID, climate, racial justice, you name it. But we don't get into these policy rabbit holes all the time because he spends a lot of his energy talking about things like the soul of the nation, right? The idea that the presidency is not just about policy making, although that's hugely important. It's not just about management, although we know we need more competent management of things like the crisis than we get out of this White House. But it's about even more than that. It's about what you can do out of that highest office in the land to call people to their highest values. And I think he understands that. The other thing I think he understands that serves him well is that the working class is multiracial. So his ability to connect with white working class voters, talking about things like his experiences growing up in Scranton, does not come at the expense of his credibility with black voters, which, after all, is a huge part of how he won the Democratic nomination. And thinking about how he has unified those messages in his campaign, I think prefigures how his presidency will be positioned to do what obviously will be an urgent order of business, which is unifying the nation as we continue to face this reckoning over racial injustice.
Former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, former 2020 Democratic presidential candidate, Pete Buttigieg. It's great to have you here, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for taking time.
Same here. Thanks for having me.